Welcome to the fourth and final episode of the first season of the Brent Talks podcast, which has been produced by the team at My Romania Community and is brought to you by the Young Brent Foundation in association with Brent Council. I'm Errol Donald, and over the past 3 episodes, I've been speaking with professionals working in Brent to explore the impact of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic on communities, families and friendship groups. We've explored a range of topics including mental health, education and youth and community. And today we will be looking at employment with Nana Anjuman, who has a wealth of experience in the welfare to work industry. And as founder and director of Access UK, he provides credible solutions to counter youth offending, gang involvement and high BME unemployment. Nana, welcome.
Welcome, Errol. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you? You good?
Not too bad.
Good.
It's raining outside, but we're here.
Yeah, summer's done now. Summer's over officially.
Indeed.
So, could you tell us a little bit more about Access UK?
Well, Access UK essentially stands for African, Caribbean Careers and Employment Support Services UK. And Access came about off the back of the 2011 riots, where I was commissioned to do some work on the causes of the riots, besides the obvious, which was the killing of Mount Duggan. Was looking at the socio-economic causes of the riots or uprisings, and trying to identify, the root causes and trying to find solutions. So when I'd done this research, I found out that the time that 1 in 2 young black people between the ages of 18 and 24 in Tottenham and across the UK were unemployed. There was obviously disproportionate incarceration rates and a whole plethora of socio-economic indicators that put us right at the bottom. At the time I was working for a welfare to work company called Indius, who basically support long-term people into work, etc. And I decided to leave my day job and actually focus on these issues, providing more tailored, culturally bespoke solutions to help young black people, because I knew that we wasn't fit for purpose, being part of the system, as it were, that's support young people. So Access was born out of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So could you tell us a little bit more about your delivery model? Like, what ages do you work with? Tell us a little bit more about also this kind of individualized service.
I can tell you've been doing your research.
I'm not new to this, not anymore.
Yeah, so we essentially provide end-to-end careers and guided services like a lot of people do. The difference with us is that our services are particularly tailored towards solving issues that young black or BAME people face, in the industry or in the sector. So one of the kind of USPs that we have is that we provide it on outreach primarily. So it's not like a central point where everybody kind of goes to. It's in the community. It could be like your local youth centre, estate, local hubs. So it's right on your doorstep. That's particularly good for kids that are involved in youth violence, etc. Because obviously all them congregating in one place is not a very good idea if you're trying to avoid youth violence. So that's one. We have a lot of ring fence opportunities for our young people. So these are employers that say that they have particular schemes or jobs to attract young black people. So when someone comes in, these are there ready for them to be plugged into. We also have a lot of solutions that go outside of even in terms of UK, in terms of people looking for, say, graduates, for example, abroad. So these are primarily Caribbean, Africa, etc., where they're looking for talent from the UK to work abroad. And we tie in with stakeholders, government, etc., into kind of helping this particular group.
Okay.
In all sectors.
Thank you. And so how long have you been in Brent, by the way? How long have Access UK been operating out of Brent?
Access itself was started in 2012-13. We came to Brent around 2014.
Okay.
So yeah.
And since then, obviously you've been on the ground and you've seen the situation through, obviously, previous experiences around the disturbances. So what would you say, what does the employment landscape look like in Brent, and what are the real prospects for young people?
Well, the employment landscape for everybody, irrespective of whether you're in Brent or Scotland, is the same. There's been a massive hike in unemployment generally, but in particular the beneficiaries that we work with, there's been it's been a marked increase. So most of our young people work in the service sector, retail, customer service, and that's been greatly hit by COVID-19. We're now officially in what the government deems to be the worst recession in recorded history. So that's going to have a negative impact on everybody, particularly those that we serve, because they're right at the bottom of that socioeconomic ladder. So they will feel the impact straight away. So in Brent, we've seen a marked increase in people making inquiries for support, stakeholders calling us, etc. So yeah.
Okay. And so how did the lockdown impact on that work that you've been doing in Brent over the past 4 or 5 years? How did the lockdown impact when it was announced?
That's a very good question. When it was announced, you see, let me rephrase it. Our work is based on building rapport with people in the real world, and so taking that away as one of our main USPs was obviously quite scary at the time. But we had to adapt. We had to adapt to the work that we were doing. So invariably we went online. Our advice to engage people, on the phone, via emails, Zoom, etc. All the non-contact means of engagement. So it was we had to adapt like everybody else. Initially, there was a decrease in people that were engaging, young people that were engaging, and that eventually changed because they were also adapting. They were going through that transition. So it was, it's inevitable that there would be a decrease in engagement. But overall, that increased, and we've seen a marked increase again in young people calling us for support, and parents, etc., calling us for support.
And given the work that you've done over the years, and that point you just made about access and people being able to access UK, if you like, how is that limited to Brent, or do people from outside the borough contact you for advice and support?
The main 3 boroughs we work in is Brent, Hackney and Haringey. Those are the 3 main boroughs, but we've been commissioned to do work all across London. And with post-COVID-19, because obviously there's no geographical boundaries of engagement, we've been engaging people all across the UK.
Okay, so you've had beneficiaries contact you from
all over.
Okay.
We've even engaged people in Ireland in terms of our work. So yeah.
All right. So it sounds as though you're providing something very different, but much needed within the sector. What would you kind of narrow that down as, in terms of what is it that you're providing that your competitors or peer organisations don't?
Okay, so we essentially provide careers and employability support services, but one that's very, very bespoke and tailored to so-called BAME people or BME people. So it looks at the specific challenges they face and provide very tailored solutions to address that. In terms of what you asked, how we're distinct from.
Yeah. So basically, what is it that you provide that perhaps, or maybe not necessarily what you provide, but is how is it that you work that is different from other organisations?
Okay, the main thing is cultural competence. Because someone listening to this might think, well, what is it they do that's special? It's cultural competence. It's understanding when that beneficiary walks through that door exactly the problems they face. Not providing a generic service, like one size fits all, as it were. Is looking at that young person, knowing exactly what's stopping them from making progress and having the solutions for it. So that's the key difference.
Okay.
It's the cultural competence that we have with our beneficiaries.
And is that in this time of BLM, etc., and the emphasis on unconscious bias training, diversity and inclusion, etc., how easy is it to acquire cultural competence? So, for example, is it something that comes naturally to you, or is it something that you've had to learn and explore in the area of work?
That's a good question, but it's also funny because I'm from the same community that I serve. The same beneficiaries roll through that door just look like me. So I know exactly where they're coming from, and there's an understanding there as soon as we walk through the door. So that's where the competence comes from. Okay.
So, for example, but if I didn't come from, and I guess I'm speaking to people, to white audiences, people who work in this sector, who are working with young BME beneficiaries. Is it something that I can be trained to do, or do I need to be immersed in that community to really understand and empathize and not necessarily have the same level of cultural competence that you do, but to really be effective in the work.
Absolutely, because we all know that mainstream services are failing BME beneficiaries all across the board. There's so much data to prove that. So we know that what makes a difference is that cultural competence. So if you're not from that community, it's imperative that you get the training to upskill yourself and understand how to overcome the challenges that these people face.
So you speak about challenges. How hard is it, or how hard do you have to work to challenge perceptions to create opportunities for young people?
Again, that's a very good question, and a question infers that there's only one kind of answer to the problem, which is invariably you're asking corporates and employers to give young black kids a chance. What we try to do is we look at the problem in lots of different ways. One of them is to empower our young people. So for instance, it's not just a focus on getting them jobs. It's also a focus on them becoming employers themselves, giving them business acumen so they can go to university, come out and set up their own practices, set up their own businesses, as opposed to just coming out of university and looking for employment. So going back to your original point of engaging corporates, we've been building up these relationships with them for a very long time. So they know that what we do, how we work, and they know that if we're going to refer somebody, we're going to refer somebody that actually can do the job, that just needs the opportunity. So equal opportunity is not just about just giving someone a chance because they're black. It's actually saying, look, this person's qualified, but just give them a chance. So we facilitate that relationship between A and B.
And just for my own curiosity, is a reception from making that offer to young people, is it mixed? Or is everyone sort of gung-ho about being entrepreneurial, or is it harder work with some audiences because they've been disengaged for so long, because they've just had so many challenges? I mean, how receptive are people to the...
We work with a wide spectrum of beneficiaries, from your graduates who've got a first-class degree, all the way across to somebody who's been in and out of jail that's got no qualifications. So the key thing is that we offer a really tailored, individualized service. So everybody that walks in, they've got commonalities, yes, but they all got their own life journey. So that's what we know. That's how we work on the basis of that person, what their specific challenges are, and we take it from there.
All right. So your offer is built on this kind of in-depth understanding of your beneficiaries. But given the challenges with Zoom and online engagement and detached outreach, etc., how do you maintain that rapport working virtually? Well,
the main thing is Zoom, you can't replicate the real world, in the virtual world, but having Zoom and WhatsApp and etc. and having the ability to see someone's face still makes a difference. So that's what we try to use to the maximum, especially in group workshops, etc. But you can never replicate that rapport you build with somebody, in the physical world. You can never do that. We could just make best do. And the thing that, because we were built up on our business on actually building those relationships, it's easier for us than somebody just number crunching and just looking at these people as just another number coming in.
How is it easier for you?
Sorry?
How is it easier for you?
In terms of
maintaining that rapport. So you built up a rapport that was already there.
Yeah.
You're saying it's easier for you to maintain that because you've established a good relationship
Absolutely.
already.
They're not walking to the job centre where they've got a 5-minute slot and it's like, okay, what have you done to look for work? Off next one comes in. Like a conveyor belt. It's literally, they can get half an hour to an hour engagement with their advisor. So after a little while, you will inevitably build up that relationship because they're not getting that anywhere else. They can't get that kind of a service in the job centre for most organisations. So.
But can I ask, that has a cost, and I'm not necessarily talking about financial costs, but that's time intensive.
Of course.
You're putting a lot of effort in, which they wouldn't get elsewhere. What's the cost of that to you, or is there a benefit to that?
Well, we're a business. Don't get this. We're not running a charity. It's a business. So we structured it in that way so we could self-fund our own organisation.
Right.
Because if we were reliant on donations and support from local authority, and we would have been closed a long time ago. So it's a business. So somebody's paying for that engagement.
Okay. So moving kind of deeper into the pandemic. So as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, what were the key issues for the diverse community of Brent? What issues were people coming to you with?
It brought up a lot of issues with people being furloughed, losing their work, and just a drop in vacancies and availability of opportunities. So that was overall. And knowing that Brent is one of the most diverse boroughs in London, inevitably had an impact on our beneficiaries. So it was a direct correlation. Also, there's been issues around, they call it digital poverty. So because a lot of things are taking place online, some people might not have the internet, some people might not have access to a laptop, for instance. So a lot of these things came out as a result of the COVID.
So in the previous podcasts, and we've had podcasts on mental health, on education and youth and employment, youth and community employment has been a recurrent theme, has always come up. But another recurrent theme has been mental health. And I'm quite curious as to kind of how Access UK sort of works with other organisations in Brent to support young people's goals, given that the issues can range from housing to health to general health and to mental health more specifically. But how are you working with other organisations to kind of manage that piece?
That's a very good question. From day dot, we operated what they call now a public health approach to helping our beneficiaries. That basically means, in layman terms, you work with a multitude of agencies that all have their specialisms, but you're working together in conjunction to help that individual person. Okay. So like you mentioned about mental health, we have a number of practitioners that we work closely with, for example, like Black Thrive, Mind in Haringey, who essentially we cross-refer our young people to. So if someone walks in and it's clearly they've got some kind of, they're depressed or they've got a mental health issue, we're not mental health specialists, but we have those partners that do, so we can refer that person for that specialist support. They can come back to us for the employability and careers, and we work in tandem, in connection, and that's how we work across the board.
And are you looking for a level of cultural competence in taking that multi-agency approach? Is that something that you work hard to kind of maintain across the board?
110%. When we started, we'd done a thorough kind of look at who were the BME specialists in different sectors. That's part of our offer. Is that if we refer somebody, they're going to another organisation that understands your issues, but from their perspective. So 110%. That's how we work.
Okay. All right. So leading up to and during the pandemic, what have you noticed about the types of jobs that are being made available to young people?
Another very good question.
I'm on a roll today. So.
No, that's a good question. A very, very solid one. And one which I probably should have done a little bit more research. But overall, there's been obviously a decline in general opportunities. But there's been increase in things like driving jobs, warehousing. For example, Ocado had a big drive recently. But overall, there's been a decline. Amazon, for example, people were working in Amazon and warehouses where employment was going through the roof because people were ordering things online, etc. Home deliveries, doing that, people that are on their bikes. So there's specific industries that have actually benefited from COVID. But overall, the trend is that opportunities are dwindling.
Yeah, so leading up to the pandemic, I was noticing certainly in Brent that there are certain areas where there seemed to be a lot of investment in terms of building works going up. So would there have been more jobs in the construction industry as a result of some of that, or did you not notice a difference in that regard?
I think initially there was a concern about health and safety. Then the government kind of cleared that, said people can still continue doing construction work. So I think it continued on the same, because these things were going on before COVID-19. So there was an initial kind of stop, and then things got back to normal within construction. Yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed is, for all ages, is having to get a grip on technology, which for people of a certain age has been a bit of a challenge. But also, your point about digital poverty is a good one, because not everybody has access to online resources, etc., etc. But tell me a bit about the technology piece in terms of employability and what the potential is for young people entering or trying to enter the workplace, and the opportunities in the technology space. I think
you're talking about emerging markets, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is, again, prior to COVID-19. So we know that certain industries are in decline. AI is coming in, artificial intelligence coming in, is going to take away a lot of jobs. But we live in a age where the kids are very, very tech savvy, and therefore, especially the young black kids. So we try to encourage them actively to look at these new avenues like robotics, digital media, all the stuff that involves using tech to make sure, to help them monetize that skill that a lot of them have, and show that actually you can earn a living from doing these things rather than the traditional stuff that they're trying to get pushed into, the music, the sports, etc. They're saying, look, that's not just the only way you can make money. You can make money in all these other forms. Even within the music industry, there's other kind of jobs within that industry that they can look at.
And the same applies for construction. Absolutely. Or whatever it is. It's not just
picking up bricks. Absolutely. It's all the other stuff that you don't see, that don't even necessarily rely on you being on site. So 100%. Okay. That's part of the work.
So obviously COVID-19 has affected everybody in one way, shape or form. Do you feel as though it's leveled the playing field, or has it actually made the playing field worse, particularly for the BAME community?
Well, we know statistically that black people or BAME people have been impacted by COVID itself in terms of contracting the illness, and that's because that's tied into socio-economic conditions. If you're the front line of services, if you're bus drivers, working on the streets, in hospitals, etc., you're more exposed to the illness, and that's the reason why black people are disproportionately impacted. In terms of leveling the playing field, it's almost like a reset in many ways. So it gives us an opportunity to look at other ways we can support ourselves. If we're talking about moving into self-employment and creating businesses, there's no better time than now because the jobs are dwindling. So how are you going to survive? So you have to look at innovative ways of actually feeding yourself, and invariably might lead back to business and that whole group economics thing whereby you're looking at new markets, you're looking at the Caribbean, look at Africa, and look at outside of the UK for that engagement. So we know statistically that most wealth is created in times of decline, not necessarily when everything's good. It's actually when times are hard that it encourages a lot of entrepreneurship. A lot of people have made it through that condition. So that's what we try to focus on, the positives.
Yeah, and we're seeing, certainly online, we're seeing young people take a more innovative entrepreneurial approach, taking more risks, using resources that they've got to just try and catch a break, in effect.
Absolutely.
But can you tell me a bit more? Are there any other programs that you're involved in that encourage this kind of a slightly different mindset in terms of being in innovative or trying to sustain your own lifestyle by generating your own income and developing a business? Are there any projects or programs that you're involved in?
Yeah, there is. It's our Road CEO, Access UK Road CEO program, and that's basically just support young people that are a lot of them on the streets, hence why it's called Road CEO. Make that transition from the roads, as it were, into legitimate business. And that's basically a business training program that we're going to be running in Brent from next month, and we've done that in the past. So it's a business training program.
Okay, and who is that? Who will that be aimed at? What age groups are we talking about?
Primarily 10 to 17-year-olds. So we're talking about prevention there, and then 18 to 28-year-olds as well.
Okay,
or it might be 30 actually.
And are there any sort of qualifications or any kind of
the only qualification needs a desire to start their own business or become self-employed. That's all they need. They don't need nothing else.
Talk to me about desire. I know we had a conversation before, and I was kind of interested in what your thoughts were in terms of that passion and desire to actually get into employment.
Absolutely. You see, our young people, a lot of them, when they're facing mainstream services, the mainstream services have written them off anyway. So when they engage them, they've already written them off. They're not going to think this young black kid is going to be the next Puffy or the next Jay-Z or something. They're not going to think that. So it's about encouraging them, giving them the faith and the motivation to say, actually, you can do it, and giving them a very realistic plan to follow. So for instance, we know that they're going to be disadvantaged in terms of even getting loans, statistically, right? So again, showing them how to get loans, how to get finance, how to be finance ready as a young black person. So all these things, they're not going to learn it in Prince's Trust. The Prince's Trust is not going to tell them that.
Yeah.
We are. So it's very, very tailored for that person to make sure that they actually, get to the position they want to be in. The reason why I say desire, because that's the key thing. If you come in and you're half-hearted, you're not going to get anywhere. So that's a key component. Everything else we can take care of. But if you're not motivated and you've got no desire, then there's a problem.
But it does take a lot of resilience, because the reality is that, even in a borough like Brent, or even especially in a borough like Brent, the socioeconomic disparities are evident. You can go from, you can take one bus and suddenly be in a very different part of the borough which has an abundance of resources, and then you've kind of got to go back to your part to no resources. So what I feel like COVID-19 has really kind of shone a light on those disparities that were experienced throughout the BAME community, and it kind of feels like there's a greater understanding of the challenges being faced by young people entering the world of work. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. If prior to George Floyd being killed, I think race went right back to the bottom of the agenda, because a lot of people made the assumption that we live in a post-racial world, which is a load of nonsense. These challenges are still there. In fact, they've even got worse. Since statistically, if you look at the actual wealth disparities and all these things, house ownership, all these social indicators, we live in an aesthetically more mixed world, but actually if you look at the data, it says something totally different. People have become more aware of it, and we've been inundated with corporates contacting us to work with us to provide solutions. So long may it continue.
Okay. And so, one of the things I've taken from this first season of podcasts is a passion and a genuine commitment of professionals working in the borough to support young people. Given that, is there anything that you would like to say to either young people or employers
about,
just as a kind of message of either hope or taking an alternative approach or being more receptive? Are there any key messages that you think young people need to hear at this particular time?
Absolutely.
Going into winter or autumn?
Absolutely. The first thing they need to realise is in Brent, Access UK is part of a consortium of about 4 or 5 providers. It's called under the MOU project, Moving On Up project, and that's specifically looking at supporting young black men into work. That's one thing. We've also got other initiatives that are very focused on helping them to start their own business, irrespective of you're male, female, Asian, black, whatever you are, white. So there are initiatives out there for you to tap into in terms of local support.
Nana, thank you so much for sharing those great insights into the work that you do in Brent to support young people and families.
Thank you. I appreciate that you invited me here to talk about what we're doing.
If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to find out more about Access UK or employment support services available in Brent more generally, please visit youngbrentfoundation.org, where we'll also be able to update you on season 2 of the Brent Talks podcast. Until then, thanks for listening.